after Colony 187. Under the guise of keeping the peace, the United Earthsphere Alliance launched various peacekeeping operations in the colonies and also ruled over them with an iron fist. Because of these actions, the colonies housed many war orphans without adequate structures to take care of them. One of these orphans was a child that we all now know as Duo Maxwell. Because they had nobody to take care of them, Duo and his friends were forced to live in a ruined house and steal to make a living for themselves. While the townspeople did sympathize with them to a certain degree, they were also annoyed at the shenanigans of these little orphan thieves. First, they were under the leadership of a kid named Solo, but he would get infected with a dangerous virus during a viral outbreak in the colony. While a vaccine did exist, it was meant only for the elite of the colony. With no other choice to save his friend, Duo snuck into an alliance base to steal the vaccine, but it was too late. By the time he could have given his friend the vaccine, he had already passed away. Duo now became the leader of the orphans, and it was also at this moment that he took the name Duo, in honor of his best friend Solo. And under his leadership, they were going to take their shenanigans one step further. Rather than continuing to steal from the regular people, they were now going to raid an Alliance food store. In Duo's eyes, they had nothing to lose anyway, so they might as well go all the way. What he didn't take into account though was how little the Alliance soldiers cared for the lives of the colony's citizens, and especially useless orphans. As soon as they approached the warehouse, they were spotted and fired upon with much prejudice. Fortunately for them though, none of the bullets hit them. Shortly after this debacle, their situation would seemingly get even worse. When they returned home, they saw that the ruin they were living in was being demolished. But luckily for them, part of the deal to demolish that ruin was that the Maxwell Church would take care of the orphans living there. All well and good, it's just that nobody ever bothered to ask the orphans their opinion. And Duo in particular found it quite difficult to adapt to his life in the church. Not only was he now forced to wear weird clothes, but they even wanted to cut his hair. He fought like a cat who was forced to take a bath, and held out long enough for Father Maxwell to come to his aid. Seeing the boy struggle, he let Duo have it his way. Sister Helen then gave his hair one final touch to at least make it somewhat more presentable. The braid that we've all gotten so used to seeing Duo with. And with this new hairstyle, he was actually pretty pleased. It made it so much easier to move around, which then also made it easier to steal things. Something he probably shouldn't have said out loud in front of religious people, as both of them immediately told him off. But rather than apologizing, he gave them the smartass response that he forgot that he was no longer meant to steal, but to beg instead. After all, a church relies on donations of the people, and this was something that, in Duo's mind, didn't make them any better. Our little Duo did seem to forget that there was one big difference though. Begging, or donations, gets you a voluntary contribution from the other party, whereas stealing provides you with an involuntary contribution. So yeah, Duo had quite a hard time fitting into his new environment. Most of his friends had already gotten adopted, but he just kept getting sent back due to his behavior. He would constantly fight with other kids, even to the point that they needed to be hospitalized. This would then result in many talks about God with the young orphan, but this was an entity that he simply didn't believe in. If there really was a God, then why were there still so many wars that created even more orphans? Father Maxwell told him that God didn't start these wars, but people did. And what people begin, people should finish by themselves. But this did not have the intended result on Duo, because he then just said that it didn't really seem to matter if God existed anyways. To the surprise of both Father Maxwell and Sister Helen though, Duo did say that he believed in the god of death, and his reasoning was simple. He'd never seen any miracles that would make him believe in the normal god, but he had seen plenty of dead people. But for now, he would no longer have to. After Colony 188, another violent uprising occurred, and the Maxwell Church now became an impromptu and involuntary field hospital and command center for the colonists rebelling against the Alliance. Father Maxwell and the church were against this, but probably due to their teachings, they did not want to abandon the wounded. With the situation quickly turning against the rebels, they got more and more desperate and believed that they could still win this fight if they could just capture an Alliance base. And all they needed for this was to just get their hands on one Leo, and they would have the firepower to take the base and win freedom for the colony. Father Maxwell tried to get them to reconsider by reminding them of the words of the late Heero. No matter what, the colonists should never resort to fighting. We'll never know if he knew that their overly optimistic plan had no chance of succeeding, or whether he was simply trying to follow his own conviction and that of the late Heero, but it had no effect on the rebels. Worse yet, they accused them of being Alliance spies trying to sow confusion within their ranks. And some even felt that they should be dealt with accordingly, obviously forgetting that it was them who'd been treating their wounded. This was when Duo stepped in and told them that if all they wanted was one lousy mobile suit, he'd go get it for them, if in return they'd leave the church and leave them all alone. Hearing this, the leader of the rebels smirked. Obviously, this kid was talking nonsense. Who in their right mind would believe that a kid could steal a Leo? Unlike his amazing plan to capture an Alliance base with a single Leo, there was no way that this plan could succeed. But Duo wouldn't take no for an answer. He might run and hide, but he'll never tell a lie. If he said he was going to get them a Leo, he'd get them their damn Leo. And Duo did succeed. But again, it was too little, too late. By the time he got back to the church, it had been completely destroyed, and everyone inside was dead, except for Sister Helen. She could still muster the strength to tell Duo what had happened, how Father Maxwell and all of them were worried about him, and how Father Maxwell tried to stand up to the Alliance by preaching peace until the very end. She then said she hoped God would bless him. And then she too passed, hopefully to the afterlife that she so fervently believed in. In the end, 245 people had died for nothing. The rebellion was suppressed, and the whole incident became known as the Maxwell Church Incident. 4 years later, a boy identifying himself as Duo Maxwell introduced himself to Professor G as the God of Death, and the rest is history. Today's story was from the Gundam Wing Episode 0 manga, and offers us a really good insight into Duo's life from before the anime, and also how it turned him into the person that he is during the anime. It's cool to see how not just his clothes, but even his hairstyle and his entire name have a deeper meaning behind them. What I also really liked about the story of the manga is that Duo doesn't just get reasons to dislike the Alliance, which is the obvious thing to dislike as an oppressed citizen of the colonies, but they also gave him reasons to dislike the rebels, who try to carry out meaningless attacks that only result in meaningless bloodshed. And with this, it makes sense that he wouldn't just want to go along with the original Operation Meteor, which would simply revert the situation and not actually solve the problem. So instead, he decides to do the dirty work himself and tries to protect the innocent people by going along with the modified Operation Meteor that we saw in the anime. Finally, the art style is nice too and accurately represents the anime characters. And that was all for the first episode of Gundam Lore on Gundam Wing. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for more similar content in the future. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.